This presentation is called Fiber, the New Protein. And we know about the importance of protein, so let's discover the importance of fiber. And we called it Fiber, the New Protein because everybody's so focused on how much protein you're getting. Even when you go out to a restaurant, they'll ask, like, oh, and what type of protein do you want on that? Instead of the foods that we talk about, and we're going to talk about macronutrients and how we don't eat macronutrients, we eat foods and the difference between, but most of this is really the importance of how fiber, in our diet, the importance of fiber in our diet. So the first thing is 97% of Americans don't get enough fiber. Only 3% of Americans get the recommended daily amount of fiber. Most Americans get about 15 grams of fiber, and the minimum daily requirement is somewhere between 21 and 38 grams. 21 grams for a female over the age of 50, 38 grams for a male under the age of 50, and everybody's in between. But realistically, the healthy requirement for fiber is up to about 50 grams per day. If we look at the traditional diets of people's 10, 20, 30 generations ago, they were eating 100 to 200 grams of fiber in any given day because most of their foods were vegetables and fruits and things that were picked from the ground or picked from trees, which has an abundant supply of fiber, not processed foods. Fiber is only found in plants. There's no fiber in meat. There's no fiber in dairy. There's no fiber in eggs. And there's little to no fiber in any junk food. Right? So if you're eating packaged foods, if you're shopping in the middle of the store, you're probably not getting much fiber. If you're shopping mostly in the egg and the dairy and the meat aisles, you're not getting much fiber. Unfortunately, the fiber is usually confined to a small section of the store where produce is. And that's, it's just the way it is. We know that fiber is something that's very protective for the body. It protects against cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, almost all forms of cancer, hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood sugar, unstable blood sugar, and so much more is protected with fiber. And then the tip is really just eat more fiber and have better health. We know that when we talk about fiber, we tend to focus on macronutrients, and foods can really be reduced down to its basic parts when we look at it from a scientific perspective. So in food we have macronutrients and micronutrients, and of the macros we have carbs, fat, and protein. These are our macros or our macronutrients. They're components of food, right? Protein is not a food. Carbohydrate is not a food. Fat is not a food. They're nutrients found in foods. So when we go to the grocery store, we don't go down a fat aisle and a protein aisle and a carbohydrate aisle because they're macronutrients that are found in foods. They're components of foods. Right? We shouldn't then just eat a fat. We shouldn't then just eat a carb or eat a protein. We shouldn't just eat a fiber. We should be focusing on making our diet complete and rounded so that we're getting a total complement of our macro and micronutrients. We're not going to talk so much about micronutrients in this presentation, but macronutrients, we should make sure that we're getting an abundant supply of all the macronutrients that we need. Now, we need fat. That's a macronutrient that the body needs. It's an essential. We need protein. That's a macronutrient the body needs. It's an essential. Fiber is something that's very, very beneficial for the body, and it's found as part of a carb, but we don't really have an essential need for carbohydrates. We do have an essential need for fats and proteins. Our body works best when we have an abundant supply of fiber, but we don't really need carbohydrates. So with this being said, you should eat a food. We should eat a fruit, a vegetable. We should eat brown rice or chickpeas or potatoes or broccoli or mushrooms or garlic or almonds. These are foods. We shouldn't focus on the components or the macros within each food. Here again, we should not eat food components. We should not focus on macronutrients like carbs, fats, and proteins. We should focus on eating whole foods. And the reason that we promote this too is because it's easier to functionally put together a diet, a lifestyle built around food when we're focusing food. It's much harder to build a lifestyle around macronutrients. And that's, it's a big component of maintaining consistency is when we have lifestyle methods. Here, the best available body of evidence suggests the healthiest diet is one that's centered around processed, unprocessed, whole, plant, fruits and vegetable, foods, nutritious substance animals consume to maintain life or growth. And this is based on basic research, epidemiology, clinical studies, centenarian studies, which are studies of people that live to 100, and the study of complex systems. And when looking at this in totality, we know that whole, unprocessed plant foods tend to give us the greatest chance of having lifespan, health span, and longevity. On planet Earth, there are regions called blue zones, and these are where people live longer and healthier than the rest of us. Okinawa, Loma Linda, Costa Rica, Sardinia. And one thing they all have in common is that their diet is more than 90% whole plant foods. Again, this doesn't mean that we eliminate meat. It just means that we increase our intake of whole plant foods loaded with phytonutrients and healthy components. Okinawa, this is one of the blue zones I mentioned, and it's with the longest life expectancy in the world, and fewer than 10% of the calories that the Okinawans consume come from animals. 90% of their calories are from whole plant foods. They eat mostly whole plants. And because of this, or associated with this, is that compared to Americans, Okinawans are 2 to 3 times less likely to die of colon cancer. Which means if you're an American, you're 2 to 300% more likely to die of colon cancer than an Okinawan. 6 to 12 or 600 to 1200% more likely to die of heart disease compared to an Okinawan. 7 times more likely to die from prostate cancer. Then 5.5 times more likely to die from breast cancer. Or Okinawans are much less likely to die from colon, heart, prostate, and breast problems. And we know that much of this is because of the diet that they eat. And it's a part of a lifestyle that the Okinawans have. What food is the most important predictor of survival among the blue zones? It's beans. Eating beans is like eating the fountain of youth. Beans can increase your lifespan. Now, there are certain people that have sensitivities to beans. If you have a lectin sensitivity, and the way you cook your beans is very important to reduce the lectins. And we can go down tons of different rabbit holes about, are beans good, are beans not good? I bloat with beans. How do I introduce beans? Can I introduce some small amounts? What's the best bean? Tons of rabbit holes we can go down. But in the general concept here, try to increase your intake of beans. And here, the healthiest bean is the one you like the most. Even hummus counts. These are mashed up chickpeas. I eat a ton of hummus. I make sure that the hummus I buy, it doesn't have an added canola oil or sunflower oil or safflower oil. The hummus that I buy, if I buy it out, is garbanzo beans, tahini, water, lemon juice, and garlic. If I make it at home, the hummus that I make at home is made of garlic, lemon juice, tahini, chickpeas, and water, or I use aquafaba, which is just the water from the chickpea can. This is a really important concept because it talks about the importance of why we eat the way we eat, because food is a complex mixture of molecules that interacts with our body. Right? I'm going to say that again. Food is a complex mixture of molecules that interacts with our body. And our body is a complex mixture of molecules that interacts with our food. So functionally speaking, food is information. Food contains nutrients. Food contains chemicals. Food contains substances that provide directions to the body, and these directions influence the body function. Great example. Have you ever eaten something and felt a certain way? Have you ever eaten something and gotten a food baby? Or have you ever eaten something and you have more energy, or eaten something and you're more sluggish? You can feel changes that happen physiologically when we eat certain foods. This happens on a level that we're not even consciously aware, that's affecting our autonomic nervous system and our gut health and our blood health, and it's affecting our liver, kidneys, spleen, gallbladder, pancreas. It's affecting our thyroid, our thymus glands. It's affecting so many different parts of our body, particularly the immune system, which has so much of its housing in the digestive tract, that these foods that we take in interact with our body in ways that convey information and influence our actions. If you want to have healthier actions and healthier influence in the body, eat plants. If you want to have interactions with the body that are less healthy, eat highly processed foods like a Velveeta cheese on white bread with Doritos. It might be delicious to some, but it doesn't mean it's good and healthy for you. And typically, people say, well, it's not so delicious, but I like this. You know what? There are a billion people that love cocaine. Doesn't mean it's good for them. Just because you like something doesn't mean it's good for you. Right? So here's another fact. We know that food interacts with your DNA in the same way, not in the same way, but essentially the same way that a toxin or a virus might interact with your DNA. In other words, foods can turn genes on or off, and these genes influence aging, they influence cancer, they influence disease. You might have a gene for some disease or some problem or some condition, but if that gene is turned off, you don't have it. Right? It's like having a stereo that's playing music you don't like. There's no power to the stereo, there's no music coming out. Right? The foods that we eat provide power to turn genes on and turn genes off. Think of your genes, our inherited genes, like a loaded gun. And lifestyle, or our food choices, are the things that pull the trigger. You never pull the trigger, the gun doesn't get fired. Typically, plants don't pull triggers for disease problems in the body. Typically, highly processed foods, ultra-processed foods, and unhealthy foods pull those triggers for the body to create genetic change in a negative way, right? Which is why we don't eat bad foods or super processed foods. On a day-to-day basis, eat more whole plants, fewer processed and animal products for a better health and longevity. Eat plants to get all of your fiber as well as all the phytonutrients that you need. So here we say eat fewer animals. The reason we're saying eat fewer animals, most people that we see in the office have an abundant supply of animal protein in their diet that's typically from factory farm-raised, conventional factory farm-raised animals, where they're eating sludge and expired Skittles and all sorts of garbage that's then concentrated in their meat, and then we're eating this concentrated garbage meat. So eating animals that come from regenerative, pastured, organic, healthy farms have meat that is much healthier for us, and that's the animal that we'd like to eat. We want to make sure that we're eating mostly plants, not mostly animals. I hope you learned something during this presentation, and we'll see you on our next one.